Hey, Mateo. Hey, Dan.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not bad. Rain held off. We had a nice day.
We did have a nice day. Tomorrow the rain is coming.
More rain.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I think, I don't know, I haven't today the drought task force met actually yesterday, the 7th. And I don't know the result of that, but they may say we're still in a drought. So if we're still in a drought, then I guess the rain is all good. I don't know.
The garden's growing.
Yeah, the rain has been great for plantings and stuff. Um, all right, so it's 6 o'clock. So I'm calling this meeting to order of the Shutesbury Conservation Commission. It's May 8th, 2025. And we're starting a little early to continue to work on the regulations. Unfortunately, Bob and Scott are not going to be able to be with us tonight, but I still think it's good to keep moving ahead with the regulations because we kind of have to get them finished up. So we're on the small project section, which I will bring up. All right. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, where were we? This is where we were. I'll be right back. All right. I think one of the things we had talked about was just looking at in the Wetlands Protection Act, what's allowed as a minor project in buffer zone and the riverfront. I don't know, are you guys still interested in just taking a quick look at that? Because sort of
Yes.
what we would use the small project permit, that kind of plays a role in that. So
Yeah,
I
I
can
think
bring
that
that.
matters.
All right, let me see if I can get that. Yeah. So, why is it doing that to me? Just went backwards again. Okay. All right, so these are the Wetlands Protection Act regulations. And right in the beginning, under jurisdiction, so these are the basically kind of like the exemptions that start. So under jurisdiction, areas that are jurisdictional. And they've got activities, any of the activities proposed or undertaken within an area which will blah, 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 requires the filing of a notice of intent except. So if you're in a resource area, you have to file a notice of intent if you're doing the listed activities except minor activities within riverfront area meeting the requirements that will be below. This is the utility exemption. So you can be in any resource area. And if you're providing, if you're substantially repair, replace, maintain, but not substantially change or enlarge anything that provides electric, gas, water, sewer, telephone, telegraph, um, those are allowed. And then there's this whole within buffer zone activities, minor activities, which is this list. So let's see, minor activities within buffer zone, outside any areas, which are the other resource areas like bank and BVW, provided that it's worked solely within the buffer zone. And then there's just some, factors to consider, but the following minor activities are exempt. So here we've got, so this is in the buffer zone, and there's also some riverfront exemptions too.
Before you go too far, the first one, the unpaved pedestrian walkways. So if somebody wants to put in a flagstone sidewalk, that's not paved, right? So that's legal?
Yeah,
Okay.
if it's less than 30 inches wide and it's for private use.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that they stuck it onto 30 since 36 is ADA.
Good
What if
point.
somebody came in and said they had an ADA issue and they, someone in the family has a walker or a wheelchair, whatever, and would we
Yeah,
provide a waiver for that kind of thing?
we could. They could apply for a waiver.
Yeah, okay.
and less than 3 feet for public access on conservation land.
Mhm.
And we've got fencing, provided it will not constitute a barrier to wildlife movement. Stone walls, stacks of cordwood, vista pruning has to be more than 50 feet from the mean high water line if it's in riverfront, or also 50 feet from BVW, whichever is farther. What does that mean? Located more than 50 feet. Okay. Um, Native species of trees, shrubs, ground cover, excluding turf lawns. Conversion of lawn to now, so this one is special because it's here under the Wetlands Protection Act, but it's the one minor activity that we took out under the bylaw. So what this does allow under the state is you take lawn and you can convert it to an accessory to a structure such as a deck, shed, patio. Again, I think it has to be more than 50 feet from the wetland boundary, whether it be mean high water for riverfront um, or actual bank or BVW delineation line. If it's over 50 feet, and it's these kinds of things. So decks, sheds, patios, pools, placement of a bulkhead, installation of a ramp for ADA accessibility. All those things, if they're over 50 feet in the buffer zone, aren't required under the state to file something, but under our bylaw, they are. So really, this isn't an exemption in Shutesbury. So in terms of something where the small project permit could definitely be used, would be with these type activities. Because we can get back to the small project permit requirements, but one of it is again that things are more than 50 feet away from resource area boundaries. So anyway, that one is not allowed under our, well, I mean, it's basically,
So that's not an
what you mean
exemption, but it
permanent.
is a small permit. So if somebody wanted to put a platform deck within 50 feet of the lake, for example,
Mhm.
we can permit that under the small permit application?
If it was more than 50 feet. I think when we get back to the small permit section of our regs, you'll see that I'm pretty sure it says small permits can be used in buffer zone when for projects that are more than 50 feet from a resource area. Similar to what would allow under the state is any of these type activities that are more than 50 feet from the resource area.
And otherwise, we have to go to an NOI
Um,
or an RDA.
yeah, you could, if it's buffer zone, I mean, you could still try with an RDA. People could file for an RDA for smaller things. Uh-oh, my phone is ringing. Either RDA or NOI if it's closer than 50 feet.
Okay.
But under our bylaw, everything except E is also allowed under our bylaw. So such things as native species, trees, shrubs, groundwater, ground cover, those things are also exempt. There's no permitting needed under our bylaw or under the state. The conversion of impervious to vegetated surfaces, provided erosion and sedimentation controls are implemented. I think that person we met on Shore Drive was asking about, like, they have a driveway that went down towards the lake, and they were thinking of taking out the driveway and revegetating that kind of area of the driveway and just keeping the driveway up by the road. That kind of thing is allowed under the state and allowed under our bylaw without any permitting at all. So they can go in and do that, except they would need to use erosion control. Activities that are temporary in nature. This is the monitoring wells, test pits for septic systems and things. I think that they need to support an NOI. Activities that are temporary and are necessary for planning and design purposes. Installation of directly embedded utility poles. So this is more DPW kind of stuff. Existing maintained shoulder within existing. So there are a few little details to it, but utility pole installation can be in the buffer zone without an application. Underground utilities, electric, gas, water within existing paved or unpaved roadways, private roadways, driveways. Trenches closed at the end of the day. Repair of underground, we don't have any sewer lines. Electric or gas facilities, that's nothing really exciting. Gates, public or private road entrances to utility right of ways. This is all kind of DPW or Eversource. Removal of existing utility equipment. Vegetation cutting for road safety. And then there's sort of a list of what's included in that. Signs, signals, signposts. Pavement repair, resurfacing and reclamation of existing roadways within the right-of-way configuration, provided that the roadway and shoulders are not widened. No staging or stockpiling of materials. Again, DPW. Repair or replacement of existing lawfully located driveway servicing not more than 2 dwelling units, provided that all work remains within the existing limits of the driveway and all surfaces are permanently stabilized within 14 days of final grade. So you could completely replace your paved driveway within the buffer zone, as long as you're staying in the existing limits of the driveway, and everything is done within 14 days. You don't need a permit for that. And that is it. So those are the minor activity exemptions in the state regs, and we have adopted them in our regulations except for E, which is the sheds, like the residential structure accessories. Any questions? Okay. Oops. All right, so back to our small project permit. Proposed work involves minimal activity. I had a comment on 7.2. Small projects involve limited work or activity outside of any resource areas listed in Article 1, except the outer 50 feet of the aura and riverfront, provided that the work or activity is at least 50 feet from. I guess I thought that was redundant. If it's saying the outer 50 of riverfront, it's going to be. Actually, what did I think about that? Yeah, I don't know. terrible, but there was some reason I wanted to um, get rid of this part here. So I'm just going to highlight it. To be outside any resource area listed in article and except outside any resource areas except the outer 50 feet of the Aurora and the riverfront area. Yeah, I mean, it just seemed, I guess, kind of redundant, but okay. Yeah, I guess I thought this was a little, like we've been talking about with the regulations, it's just sort of talking too much on sort of the reasons instead of just listing the regulations, right? The intention is to manage a protected, and streamlined process. It just, yeah, I don't know if we need it. What do you guys think?
Maybe keep it. I think it remains a little bit confusing to me still, what thing falls under which category. I know it seemed all cut and dry while we were looking at that list, and then again,
Mm-hmm.
when I step back from it, it seems like I think of confusing thoughts that mess up that clarity. So maybe it could be phrased better. I don't know. Or put someplace else, perhaps. I'm not sure. I think if I was doing something within, the aura, I guess one thought I have is maybe the small project things should be shoved to the very front of this. Because to the extent that we can, I would think we'd want to put as much as we could under small projects.
Mm-hmm.
And then whatever doesn't qualify under that, then we're taking it through the hoops of the stiffer requirements,
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I guess my question comes in, which was 7.4, because like what is this, like is significant enough to warrant an RDA or NOI? Like that was the part I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't incorporate the state list and we're flying, then I know we don't want to repeat everything that's in the state regs, but on the other hand, it might help with clarity when we're looking at stuff, because we're not flipping through the state regs too all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I forget. So somewhere in these regulations, we state, and it's not in this section, we state that we accept the minor projects in 310, 310 CMR. But,
Yeah, and
we
I
state that in,
remember, I remember that argument, let's not repeat stuff. It just seems like maybe we need a little footnote or an asterisk with a couple of lines of the sort of things that we're talking about.
Yeah, like
That
refer
qualifies,
back.
just as,
Yeah.
just so we're not boneheaded and forget the obvious.
Mhm.
Is there a way to do a search to go back to that section or?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking the same, that maybe in the beginning of this section, and you're saying, we can move the small project permit section up earlier in the regulations, as so that it is something that you see before you see
Yeah,
Right.
how to file an NOI and an RDA and all that.
yeah,
Um, and also right here in the beginning, we can refer again to the state, um, the minor activities, the buffer zone
maybe
minor
refer to it,
activities.
maybe put the reference thing there, but also give a couple examples of what we're talking about so that you won't go searching for that rock. I mean, I'm always trying to look for the easy out if I'm doing something. So if you say there's a simple way, I'm gonna grab that page and run and I could, if you deter me right away, I'm better off if I, see that I can't do what crazy thought I have. I don't know.
Yeah, I like all of that. I'm also just gonna say move this section up. Um, I like all of that. I just a little leery of only listing some of them, you know? Um,
Can you just say C 310 CMR 10.02,
For more detail. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
everything
Okay.
but E.
Yeah.
I
Well, and
don't,
I think we have, I think we say that in these regs in a different spot. So that I can refer to the section of our regs where we accept all those minor exemptions. And then I think we do refer to the Wetlands Protection Act section. But we can also list a couple examples and say, refer to this section of the regulations for more details.
especially if we look at a couple of the things we've been doing, maybe we can just rattle off a few that are common things people are trying to do. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be everything, it doesn't have to be 100%.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's good. That clears things up a bit.
Like the driveway thing is a nice thing to know.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So yeah, Mary had a good question about 7.4. We reserve the right. It's almost like this is just saying we reserve the right to, so it's written in there just to reserve the right. It's a question of when that would happen.
Exactly.
Um,
That was my question.
yeah, so say a project's meeting the requirements, so it's in the outer 50 of the buffer zone. Um, I was wondering, yeah, it's then in the outer 50, they're telling us that they're going to use erosion control. It's on some kind of a, simple plan that they've sent to us. Um, it comes down to the way that the state actually writes a lot of the buffer zone, um, their whole section on buffer zone, and it really is that it's up to the commission. If the commission feels like a project is going to impact the resource area, then, for example, if somebody under the state submitted an RDA, because under the state, anything in buffer zone, you can submit an RDA. And an RDA is almost asking, do I need to submit an NOI? That's kind of the purpose of the RDA. And if a commission, and it's completely in the state regs, it's really left up to the commissions to decide whether you feel like an NOI is required. And it really comes down to, do you feel like this project is actually going to is actually going to impact the resource area? So we'd like to see a full NOI submitted. And I think this is a similar thing. If somebody submits a very, because with the small permits, we'll get down to it, like what's required from the applicant, um, really is like no abutter notification. There's no form, although I think we do have a little form, like our own form, but it doesn't have to go to the state. Um, so really they could just submit a very simple plan with one of these with a small project permit. So somebody could submit something to us that we look at and go, wow, like we really think a lot more detail on what's happening here. Like I think you're going to need to de-water if you're going to, build that deck, or something just comes to us where we feel like it might impact the resource area, or there just really isn't the detail that's needed for this particular project that's being proposed, then we just say, you know, we really would like to see an RDA, or if it's, we could decide on an NOI. It is really left up to the commission, and it makes it hard for the commissions to have to make those decisions, but that's our
Well, an
job.
example might be, I think we had somebody cite a concern a while back about their neighbor who was putting in a driveway and they thought it was too close to I don't know, whether it was a stream or a pond or I forget what it was. They were just resurfacing their driveway, I think. And that would have
I don't
fallen under
remember.
this special permit, right?
Yeah, if they were gonna stay, well, if they're outside 50 feet from a resource area, that sounds like it could have, yeah.
And if they were not outside the 50 feet, if they were within the 50 feet of some, I don't remember the details of that one. If it was within 50 feet, then they have to do an RDA?
Yeah.
Okay. Even for resurfacing, because I read that just now as you didn't have to if you were just working on your spot within a limited time frame.
Oh, under the exemptions.
Yeah. But this is still contingent on you being outside the 50 or 100 feet, depending.
Only the ones that are mentioned as over 50 feet in these minor exemptions require that. So like vista pruning, provided the activity is located more than 50 feet from mean high water for riverfront or BVW or whatever resource area delineation. Here's another one that's 50 feet. Oh, that's the one that we don't take anyway by the state. So the other ones, if it doesn't say 50 feet, they're for the entire buffer zone. So I don't remember what the driveway one, I think it was like the last one. This is all DPW. Repair or replacement of existing lawfully located driveway servicing not more than 2 dwelling units, provided that all work remains within existing limits of the driveway and all services. Yeah, so that doesn't, you're right, that one doesn't say over 50 feet. So in this case, a small permit isn't even required because it is both exempt under the state and under our bylaw.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. I guess I have to tell myself these things 12 times before I think.
It's so confusing. They don't make it simple, right? It's always so much of rereading of the regulations. Um, so anyway, that 7.4, I think it's just giving us the right to
Mhm.
say, and I think that's important to be in there. Let's see, what else do we have?
So then you get into this activities that may not be permitted. And any activity that involves the use of heavy equipment. So if you're having your driveway resurfaced, theoretically, they're gonna bring in one of those roller things or, you know. Something.
Yeah, let me see, all small projects. So, yeah, activities that maybe not be permitted.
So it's may or may not. So, okay, I'm back to liking my driveway idea.
Well, but so the driveway thing is exempt. It doesn't need any permitting because it's
Yeah.
listed as a minor activity under the state and we accept all those minor activities, right? So this would be something else. So let's For examples, we can talk about the accessories to houses, because we're not accepting that minor exemption that the state provides. So say somebody wants to put a deck on and they're
Well,
outside 50 feet.
okay, but here it says may or may not be permitted if they're using, say, helical piles. They lump them there with concrete pier supports, but helical piles really create almost no ground disturbance. It would be inaccurate to say zero ground disturbance, but they just create a little anthill.
Yeah.
And so it almost shouldn't be in that paragraph. Maybe it shouldn't be there at all, because if you have a choice, for example, of using something, you know, the tubes or whatever, you know, where you're actually hand digging, you're creating a pile of dirt, and those helical pile things, they don't. The machine probably is a bigger threat than the drill.
Well, I think this is saying what you can't do a project that involves substantial regrading, excavating, filling, or other form of ground disturbance except for the installation of
Oh,
helical
there I am,
piers
not reading it right again.
or
Okay.
in-ground cast or poured concrete. So it is giving,
That
they
does
are
give
allowed,
leeway.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Uprooting or root grappling of trees.
Oh, okay, so the next line gets me, the mowing or clearing of native vegetation. What do we mean by that?
The mowing or clearing of native vegetation in a resource area that is not a compromised tree. See, now here they say, yeah, now this is confusing to me, because when you say not in a resource area, any activity in a resource area listed in Article 1 above, other than those located in the outer 50 feet of the aura, are exempt. So when they were saying here, the mowing or clearing of native vegetation in a resource area, we are including the buffer zone and riverfront.
So does that say you can't mow down to the edge? I mean, I think I've read somewhere else that if that's the existing vegetative cover, that's fine.
Yeah,
And
no,
the way I'm reading this is, that's not fine.
Yeah, mowing is allowed. And what I'm
So
wondering is if this goes against, again, one of these. Because there's vista pruning, but only in the outer 50. Planting of native species, not turf grass.
And what are we looking at here? This is the state rule now?
Yeah,
You know, if we're trying to encourage plantings along the edge of a stream or lake, and then you say you can't do any vista pruning unless you're 50 foot back, that is not a good, strong encouragement to plant along the stream or waterway.
mm-hmm.
If I have grass going all the way down to the water, and you know, and someone says to me, ecologically, you'd be better off to have a vegetative buffer strip along the edge, and the bigger the better. And then you tell me I can't trim it unless I'm 50 feet from the edge of the water. What you just said to me is keep your grass. Is that what we
Yeah,
want to say?
but what it comes down to is we can be more restrictive than the state, but we can't be more lenient than the state. And right here, the state is saying, if you're more than 50 feet, you don't need to submit any kind of an application if you're going to prune. So you're talking like right down by the lake. Say, okay, somebody under D, somebody plants native species and they don't have to submit any kind of a permit or anything because that's listed here as something that's exempt and they don't need to, but then they go 5 years later to prune it and it's all right on the bank, they do need to file an RDA. They're not
So-
saying, none of this is ever saying you can't ever do anything. It's just saying, these are the things that you don't even need to submit any kind of a permit for. So
Yeah,
you
but
would
this-
need to submit an RDA.
But somewhere else, now my brain is having its own little holiday. Somewhere else, we said you can prune up to 20%. I thought it did. No,
I don't think so.
that is my
I
own
don't-
personal holiday.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that. And I don't,
I think it is somewhere in there,
in
but-
our regulations,
perhaps.
that would be strange because we can't, like I said, we can't be more lenient than the state. And the state here is saying that if you're closer than 50 feet and you want to cut vegetation, you need to file an RDA.
All right, the problem in life is if you want people to grow native plants and have a vegetated buffer strip between the water and whatever else they're doing, and then they're not allowed to cut it down or trim it. Heidi hody. I would not be planting anything that grows tall,
Yeah.
and it would be a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. There's things like you could file an RDA or say with your original notice of intent where you're doing your project and part of the notice of intent for mitigation or even just part of your project is to plant native stuff along the bank of Lake Wyola there. So you bring your notice of intent forward with your whole project and the commission goes through it all and agrees that that can be part of the project for you to plant those. And then part of that application can be like O&M for the next however many years in terms of maintaining those shrubs. So if you got it permitted that way through the notice of intent of the project for what they're being planted for, then you wouldn't have to come back for an RDA because you've just gotten a permit that says that you can maintain those shrubs for the life of the permit.
That's sneaky genius.
Sneaky
No, I think
genius.
that's a really good idea. I don't know if I would want to limit it to the length of the permit. I think I want my 100-year lease, but
I tell
something like that.
I've always told everybody, you have a yard or say it's a commercial, whatever, you want to do a bunch of things, put them all into one notice of intent. Don't keep coming back to the commission every year for a new little project. If you want to put a deck on, but you also want to completely change your vegetation on this side of your, do it all once so you don't have to do it over and over. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Actually, that's good though, because that would make it, that would take the sting, at least a little bit of the sting away.
yeah. Yep. So I just want to make sure, I guess I thought I read through this section. I just want to make sure that it agrees with that state exemptions that we were just looking at. Filling or other form of ground disturbance. Yeah. Six or more compromised trees. Remove any non-compromised healthy trees. So really, if you're inside the 50, no, if you're outside the 50, if you're outside the 50, you can take down any non-compromised healthy trees or six or more compromised trees. Oh, these are things you can't do. Huh. The tree thing gets me a little bit. I think people should be allowed to do that, right?
Yeah, especially putting a limit on your compromised trees. If we had a, you know, a tornado go through, like went through Wendell, you wouldn't be able to just run in there with your chainsaw and clean things up? You need a permit,
No, that would be an emergency,
huh?
right?
Okay. You'd have to follow up with a permit.
Supposed to.
Oh, God.
Under this, if there's big enough events, DEP will issue these big emergency exemptions, like for a tornado or something like that, where even all the state regs and everything get,
So in the tree questions, we passed
yeah,
out a small handful of
not be
tree cutting
permitted.
for 2 trees, 4 trees, you know, a small number of trees. We did administrative approvals that don't cost people anything.
I
And
know, that's why I'm looking at this going, I don't like it. The removal of any not, so this is saying that these activities cannot be permitted with a small permit. So, my internet connection is unstable. Um, I have to like clarify these things in my head too. If you're applying for a small permit, you have to be working in the outer 50 of the buffer zone and the riverfront. Then this is saying under this list, none of these things can even be included, even if they are in the outer 50, because they just can't go through the small permit process. And they're saying removal of any non-compromised healthy tree. So anybody that wants to take even just one healthy tree down anywhere within 100 feet of a resource area has to file an RDA.
yeah, see, that's crazy. But are we tripping ourselves because the very first line under 7.6, activities that may not be permitted or shall not? I mean, I think if you're interpreting it as shall, then we have the problem. If you're interpreting it as something that we have some discretion,
Yeah, I was
then
thinking it meant no, this list is stuff that cannot, and that you can't use a
permit.
small permit for, you have to file an
Then
RDA.
it should say shall not be permitted, not may not be permitted.
Okay,
And I'm not sure if I like shall there. I think I like may.
Will.
I'm not sure if I like will. I think may because things.
You're going back. You're going in a circle here.
I am. I always do.
it is, whoops. Now what did I do? Oh, I just jumped. I was trying to turn on the thing where I can make changes and then we get lines through it and stuff. What is this stuff? I think I went up a page. Did I go down a page? Uh,
Yeah, keep going up. We're in the 7s.
oh, okay. Here we are. Tools. Format. I know you like it as May, but I'm just seeing if this works. Dang it, it didn't work. What do I need to do? Anyway, I can just highlight that and back to it. Yeah, so that's how I interpreted that these are things that are not allowed. So if we're looking at the trees again, I don't like 7.66. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like again, if these are things, if these are over 50 feet from a resource area, they could
I don't like that
file
at
a
all.
small permit.
Especially
What?
not in town here, where a good many of the lots are deeply wooded. Uh,
Yeah.
I would call it into question more where somebody owns two trees and they're cutting the last two down. It gets tricky when you got a situation like that, you know? We've got people that are living in a completely forested area or those that have a bush. And the rule applies the same.
I want to compare this to the vegetation section that we already went through, right? We already went through that whole section that talked about the numbers of trees and things that you can take down. Just want to make sure it's consistent with that. And I don't think, I would rather have people able to submit a small permit to take down a healthy tree or 6 compromised trees if they're over 50 feet from a resource area, which would be the purpose of the small permit, right? But
Yes.
here they're saying that you can't use small permit for that, so you're stuck doing an RDA.
Well, you just said here they're saying that. Isn't that us?
Huh?
Aren't these our regulations?
Yeah, so
So I would,
I'm saying we get rid of that.
yeah, there we go. Having a little
Okay,
pronoun problem there. We can do that.
okay. Um, and I just want to compare it to the vegetation section and make the language the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, and then
if I would go back a little bit,
yep.
if we're going to read this as a shall, if you go up to the can't use any heavy equipment, um, that gets funny. Okay, we go, you know, you can do your driveway, which might involve heavy equipment, and that's okay. But then here it says you can't use heavy equipment, so we've got a conflict. If
Well,
we're
with the driveway
interpreting,
thing, they're again, that was under the state, and it does say you have to stay within the limits of the current driveway.
yeah,
So you're not, your driveway may technically be located in buffer zone, but it's already developed. You know
yeah,
what I mean? It's already an existing driveway and all you're doing is covering, regrading it maybe with gravel or repaving or whatever. So I think this is saying, again, what if you're doing a deck and, and you are, over 50 feet from a resource area? So you, can file a small permit because you're over 50 feet. But you plan to use like real heavy equipment that might really mess up the buffer zone. Um, for some reason, like, I don't know, your deck is really fancy or who knows what. Um, that's
well,
kind of the idea.
so then I'm wondering what really heavy equipment is. So, you know, like the machine that they drive those helical piles in, they're little treaded things. I don't know
Yeah,
what they weigh, but they're not huge. Some people own tractors that probably weigh more.
yeah.
Nobody cares they own a tractor.
Well, I think again that this is can be interpreted how the commission, it's there so the commission can use it if you want to, if we
Yeah, I
feel
just
like,
I hate that there's a cudgel sitting there. You know, so if you've got somebody that doesn't want anything to happen, then they pick that stick up.
yeah. Well, we could add any activity that involves the use of heavy equipment that may cause rutting, and
Yeah, but
that's
you
what
know,
I think of.
minor rutting, a little minor rutting. I mean, my God, on a bad day with a lawnmower, I can create ruts all over God's creation. If you can fix it with a rake and throw some seed, to me, that's not damage to the system. If a human can go out and rake it up and throw some seed on it, that isn't any worse than you left a pile of leaves there too long and whatever was growing died. You
Mhm.
know?
No. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm all right getting rid of it, although I
I
kind
mean, I'm
of
sure there's
do.
something, but I,
I like having sometimes lists like that that give us backing if we do feel like a project really shouldn't be under small
well, in
permit.
that case, maybe it shouldn't say any activity that involves the use of heavy equipment. Maybe it should be some activities. There's your wiggle room.
Yeah. Or
Because you can
any
do a lot
activity.
of stuff without killing everything from here to tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Or any activity that involves the use of some heavy equipment.
I would say some activities because it probably really depends what they're doing. If they're digging with
Impactful heavy
it,
equipment.
if they're digging with it, or, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we've got these exceptions where if you got to dig a trench for an electric thing, you can dig a trench as long as you fill it in.
Mm-hmm.
How is that different? They're using some kind of heavy equipment, they're digging a trench.
Mm-hmm.
We're letting people use it sometimes and not others, and it isn't clear when we're going to say it's okay and when it isn't.
True. Yeah, I've always thought of the minor activities as like this kind of weird list of particular activities that the state has said you don't need to file anything to do these few specific things, but then basically everything else you do. And that's just the way it is. It's almost like you're going to do a project. So you go look at that list and hope that maybe what you're doing is on there, but most likely it's not going to be. Um, so I don't know if that helps you at all, but I guess I've always thought that most projects are going to have to require something. There's sort of just this small list that doesn't, but um so any activity involves the use of heavy equipment. Again, I kind of like qualifying the heavy equipment, that
Create
heavy equipment
substantial
that,
damage or something.
right, that could,
If you can fill in a trench and have it look fine by dinner time, you're good to go.
yeah, yeah. Well, and the trench stuff was probably exempted under something else, like you were saying. So this would be a different kind of project where
But the same
somebody might
idea.
be wanting to
If you,
bring an excavator in or something.
yeah, if you and you could if you've got the thing work, it isn't going to be a long damage thing. You're just going to fix it, bing bang.
Use of heavy equipment cause significant damage to the buffer zone, to the aura.
Close enough.
All right, and since my thing is not allowing me to edit, I'm just gonna highlight and come back and edit when I can figure it out.
Yep.
Put a line through it. Okay. And then here it involves substantial grading, excavating, filling, or other form of ground disturbance, except for those things. Uprooting or root grappling trees. And then we talked about this tree thing, that we don't really like that one. The construction of docks, piers, or other water-dependent structures that are not floats, buoys, or swimming platforms, requiring a Chapter 91 water. So those are not allowed as a small permit.
Why do we single them out?
Again, you know what? I want to make sure that this agrees with, remember we went through the whole docks piers section, remember? And we
Yeah.
made some changes. So I
Yeah, we
just want
did.
to make sure this agrees.
I mean, I'm just thinking, this is almost sort of an old world thought that's written there. And there, we still have a few wooden docks out there, but for the most part, these things are, aluminum, screw them together, kind of erector sit that's to screw A to B and stick it in the water kind of a deal, it's not
Yeah,
in fact, they usually come assembled and it's just getting enough herkin people to carry it on into the water.
yeah, I think it has a little bit to do with the fact that those require the Chapter 91, and Chapter 91 really requires commissions to review and kind of vote.
So if we're doubling back to that, remember, so maybe this should say the construction or installation of new docks or piers. Because remember, we got the 1984 grandfather clause, and then it was a I don't remember what, 94 exemption. Call the Concom and tell them you still have one, pretty please. And then the ones that require Chapter 91.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
So yeah, give yourself a couple of asterisks because yeah, you want to make sure that agrees with all the crap we duked out before.
Yep. Okay, more than 120 square feet of previously established lawn to a residential accessory structure. And not limited to decks.
So you can't do that under a special permit? That list?
Right, this is the no special permit list.
Okay, so
Um,
the last thing, the installation of accessibility ramps really concerns me because if I need an accessibility ramp, that pretty much means something pretty shitty happened to me. You know? Really,
it got old.
I don't see how we're gonna benefit from dragging somebody through a regulatory process because they're gonna need that damn ramp. And we shouldn't be standing in the way of ADA, whatever the hell. I don't know if that's even legal to put in there that we're loading on extras on accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be inclined to just erase that. If you need a ramp, you can have a dang ramp, do it.
Well, so this is the list that's under I think that's the E that we didn't, that we've said we are not including in ours. The conversion of lawn to accessories, decks, placement of bulkheads, installation of ramp for compliance with accessibility requirements. Station is located more than 50 feet. So even the state doesn't allow you to put in a ramp
Build a ramp.
unless
Geez,
you're
how did they
over
get away with
50
that?
feet.
How are they not in, well, probably just, I don't know which week, we probably already threw out all the federal ADA rules.
Yeah, how are they not in
But
yeah,
that seems
conflict?
incredible. That we've thrown some state requirement on top of a federal permission.
Here's the mowing of lawns is not subject to the jurisdiction under, although we didn't accept that one under our bylaw. Um,
Why don't you highlight that and see if we can't make mowing something that isn't going to give everybody heartburn.
I feel like it's in here somewhere.
I think it is too, but
That mowing comment is in here somewhere. So under the state, these things are all allowed in the outer 50. And what we're saying is, so that we said that they're not under our bylaw, but they are, but they could still have a small permit unless they're over 120 square feet of lawn. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Basically, then they're saying if it's over 120 square feet, you have to file an RDA.
You better hope that my mental capacity isn't compromised when my physical capacity is.
All right, it's 7:02. Unfortunately, that was our hour. How much more of this section is there? Oh, not very much. Maybe if we have a short meeting, right now, we can come back and just finish this section at the end of the meeting.
Yeah,
But let's, I'm just gonna stop sharing for now. All right. Okay, so we already opened the meeting. I believe I said this meeting is being recorded. But now we'll start our regular meeting, 7 o'clock. Comments from me. Um, I think Mateo sent around an email about everybody signing the Whiteman CR. I went up and signed today, and I ended up making like a copy of a signature page for each person because Grace has to be standing there when you sign it so she can notarize. So now there's sort of a page for each person.
that was confusing. I did that, and Mayor, you're probably the next one up that could possibly go do that.
Yeah. I will try. It's on my calendar for tomorrow
You just gotta make
afternoon.
sure Grace is there.
Yeah.
Did you sign one, Jan?
I did this afternoon.
Oh, this afternoon. Okay, because I was there. I must have gotten there before
I
you.
signed the form that you signed, and then I was like, what are all these other pages for?
That's why I wanted to say something tonight because I thought people would be like, people would just do what you did. And I actually told Grace, I'm like, if people do that, they have to sign their own.
Yeah, I did that too, finally.
Okay, great. Um, what else did I want to mention? I guess we can talk about this during site visits. Um,
Is that why we signed it? Because it's a CR under the Concom? Because we haven't signed
Yeah.
anything else, right?
right,
Not since I've been
right.
here. Okay,
I mean, the notices of intent, we sign them electronically
electronically,
right
right?
now. But this, because it has the notarizing and whatnot, it needs actual signatures.
Mhm.
I doubt it would make its way through all the signatures and approvals that it needs if we tried to use our, so the notices of intent that we electronically sign right now have this sheet that's a vote that the commission took a while back before I was on the commission that allows for electronic signatures. Like the commission voted to allow those. It was during COVID. Everybody was
Yeah.
doing it. All the commissions were doing it. You had to because people couldn't sign things by hand. And that's accepted by the registries of deeds across the state. Those voted things that were allowed for electronic, and we're still using ours so that we can do it electronically because it's much easier because we
Yeah.
Zoom everything.
Sure.
Anyway, I can't think of anything else I wanted to really mention. There was something, but
Beth, you said you had mentioned you wanted to just bring up Mark Rivers, Chapter 91, Simplified License.
yes. Thanks, Mateo. Yeah, so Mateo sent around Mark Rivers Chapter 91 renewal of his doc license, and I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of it and that we don't need to vote on that as far as I know because it's a renewal of a license. And so when the license was originally created. There was a notice of intent sort of involved with that. That's the way I understand it at this point. He notifies the different committees in town. And I think basically when he goes forward and submits his application to Chapter 91, if they want more information from us, he'll have to come back to us with some kind of a request for more of an approval. All depends on what they want. So, but I mean, I just wanted to mention it because I don't feel like we need to put it on an agenda at this point. And I'm just gonna, Mateo, I left the DPW notice of intent, I mean, the order of conditions in the box, in the mailbox today. So if you could record that, that would be great.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, and there was an email chain, I think you were on it. If not, I can send it where FERCog was saying sometimes with those, because there's not a specific address associated with it, when you're taking it to be recorded, you can use the address of DPW to have it tied to. Because it has to be tied to something at the registry. Okay.
When we use that order of conditions, it's predicated on the DPW coming before the Concom with an annual list, right?
Mhm.
So does the annual list come in July or does it come at some other time?
I think we had talked to them about spring. So
Spring.
I should reach out to Dave now that that order conditions is out there for him to come and talk to us about what he wants to do this year.
That makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so item number 3, review and vote on the minutes of April 24, 2025. Did everybody get a chance to look at it? Are there any comments?
I have one comment. Mateo, there was a section in the site visit where we were talking about whether you could see any concerns at the library site from outside the fenced structure, you know? And I think you put down that you could see it from the road, but you'd have to walk along the fence line. You can't see much from the road. Just clarification.
Okay, this is for the April 24th. Hang on a second.
Bob had asked if he could see it on a Saturday when it's locked up, and you have to walk the fence line to see any troubles.
Okay, I see the sentence. So you're saying you could not see it from the road?
You can't see it from the road, but you could see it if you walk the fence line.
Okay, thank you.
All right, motion to approve the minutes of April 24th.
So motioned.
Second,
Second,
right? Take roll call. Rowan,
Aye.
Fox,
I,
and Wilson. Aye. All right, next we have site visit update. Jan,
Okay, so what did we do? The day after our last meeting, we went out to the library and had a site visit. The company that put in the original erosion barriers had come and added some select wattles. They did not replace all the wattles. And they did a slight repair on the settling pond near the road. We were expecting a bunch of rain, so I went out the following Monday. And I didn't see any problems. So they bet on their correction being the one that would work, and it did. We got 1.5 inches of rain at my house, so Mark decided to bet on the gamble and he won. He was proud of himself. So yeah, whatever, you know. Then yesterday I ran over to the Burns house. They're gonna build some stairs, and the question was whether they had put up erosion barriers. They did. They've got a sock around wherever they were proposing to build, so that's ready to go for construction. And today I went to the library again. Again, there were no issues. The grass is starting to grow. There's a green shimmer. It's not full or complete, but there's definitely grass growing now over a lot of that mud. And we've had almost 3 inches of rain since the last visit that I made there, but nothing got outside the envelope that I could see. So again, Mark's gamble worked. The only thing is, while I was there, a truck loaded with pipes and stuff for another construction site brought some stuff in for the library. And when leaving, the guy got off the beaten path and he was mired up to his axle before he could hit the road. So it's not like it's not a quagmire in there.
I bet with all the rain we've had, I mean, that's,
But it was all within. I mean, it has not gone running out, so they have done their job.
mhm.
I won't
Well,
worry as
good,
much
that's
now.
great. What?
I won't worry as much now.
Good. Sounds like where places he put those extra wattles, he was right on.
It didn't, well, you know what's happened is the soil is accepting the water now. We were in that part of the year where it
Oh,
wasn't.
it was still
And so we were
frozen.
getting mud rushing across
Frozen.
frozen mud, and that wasn't working.
Right. Okay, when's your next visit?
Well, I said to Roger, if we got a barrel of rain, I'd come out next week, and otherwise maybe we'll go back to every other week. Unless, the weather dictates otherwise. He was happy to
Yeah.
walk around with me on a sunny day.
I bet.
Mhm.
Well, we are supposed to get like 1.5 inches tomorrow.
If we
So,
do, I'll go
there you
out again,
go. Okay, thank you for keeping up with all of that. That's great. I have to throw in that I did 2 site visits. Jan was gonna come that day, but you were sick, right? There was something,
Boy, yeah.
you were sick.
It was allergies that went maniac.
That's too bad. Well, I'm glad, it looks like you're feeling better. So I went to 7 Baker Road, which is the farm at the intersection of Baker and Pelham Hill Road. And I met the owner, but also with Kestrel, because we share responsibility of a agricultural conservation restriction on that land. So we kind of have 2 roles. We work with Kestrel on the conservation restriction, but we also are there to protect the wetlands. They're looking to put 2 small sheds that are, she had a different name for them. They're for the horses. They provide sort of a windbreak and a little shelter for the horses. And this is the paddocks that's on the north along Pelham Hill Road. So if you're coming down Pelham Hill Road, it's that first area. You see that they have a ring, a horse ring up there too. So
Yeah.
these would be within that large area, 2 spots. And all we did was we walked around and looked for kind of the best spot. Because it's within an area that is used for agriculture, it's for the horses, it's under the agricultural, that whole paddock is under the agricultural exemption because it's being used for a profit, because they, what is it? Store horses, they have horses that stay there that belong to, they board horses, yeah. So they're making money. So anyway, they qualify for the agricultural exemption, so that entire area is within that, so they don't need to file with us. They do need to, let us know what they're doing. So anyway, we just walked around and we kind of found areas that were both flat enough, but then also there is this wetland that comes between that paddock and the next sort of fenced in area. And so I kind of had her try to stay as far away from that, also over 50 feet at least. So there was that. They don't need to file for that. Then I went to 681 Wendell Road, which they're going to come to our May 22nd meeting with with tree removals that are under an administrative approval, which once we get our regs passed will be called the small project permit. And those were all over 50 feet from the wetland line. I saw where the wetland line was and just agreed that they could be done under an administrative order. And I think Mr. Iggs has submitted the documentation he needs to and stuff. So we'll see that at our next meeting. And that's all. Any others, Jen? Are you done?
That's it for me.
All right, next we have land management update, and Scott's not here. And I don't think there's been any activity on any of our conservation land since our last meeting. So 7:15. We can open the public hearing for the RDA for 51 Shore Drive. And I'm guessing that's you, Jessica?
It is. Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the Concom.
Thank you.
So you can present the project. You can, if you have like a plan that you want to share, we can give you sharing capabilities to just bring us through the project, talk about it a little bit, or share whatever documents you want.
Okay. Well, I had submitted all the documentation when I submitted the RDA, but essentially it's a pretty simple plan. We're looking to build a 12 by 18 platform deck, meaning it's just a step above the ground. There will be no stairs. There will be no railings. It's basically just to have a slightly elevated and flat area for seating and recreation. And yeah, there's not a whole lot to it. There are 2 bushes that would need to be relocated, which I was thinking about just shifting them down slightly, shifting them over. The proposed deck would not be attached to the house. It would be freestanding. As I understand it, there's no permit needed. It's just because of the vicinity to the lake that we want to make sure that we're doing everything properly and going through the correct channels.
Okay, do you know what's the closest distance to the lake of the construction? Do you know?
We did measure that the day that we had the site visit. I want to say it was 37
Okay,
from the edge of the deck to the lake.
okay.
And then that was based off of it being 2 feet away from the house. So there would be a gap between the house and the deck. It would not be attached.
So what's there right now? Is it lawn?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. Just grass.
and are you guys digging up any of that lawn or just putting this right on top?
Yeah, there would be some leveling that would need to be done in order for the deck to be level. So they're going to dig out the loam. And then they would like to put in 3/4 inch stone so that for the drainage. And there would be a concrete center, I guess, and that's again for leveling purposes. But it would be supported on chimney blocks.
Okay.
The deck
So
itself.
there'll be a little bit of digging.
There will be
excavating a little.
yeah, there's a very small grade that kind of runs to the lake. So it kind of like goes from the house slightly down. We have a pretty flat yard, actually. It's not significant at all. It's not something you would even feel under your feet. Everything's pretty level. It's just to make sure that the deck is, completely, level.
Okay. And so with projects like this, we always like to see some kind of erosion control between the work area and the lake. So that means either silt fence with hay bales, or you can use what is called a silt sock or a wattle, which are
Yep.
these kind of rolls. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, those were placed at the end of our little cove area. Um, I'm not sure when they were doing either drainage work or lake or road work. And they were there for a very, very long period of time. So I am familiar with what those are.
okay, yeah. So either I don't know if you're hiring a contractor to do
I
it,
am.
and
Oh, yes.
okay, so I'm sure they'll be very familiar with wattles and just erosion control in general. And so we would require, a line of that to extend between the lake and the construction area for sort of like the length of the construction area.
Okay, and how long does that need to be up for? Like I said, the last one was left up for about 2 years, which I think was way too long. I think people just forgot about it and it just sat there, but then it got like kind of rotty and gross.
Yeah, no, I would say with this, because so you're gonna dig up the loam and you're gonna put down the gravel and put down the deck. Is there gonna be any area of kind of open dirt around the extent of where the deck's gonna be, or you really feel like existing lawn is gonna come up pretty closely to
Yeah,
where
we
the deck is gonna
actually
be?
there's going to be a little perimeter of the stone that's going to continue out the from the deck, just so that we're not like weed whacking onto the deck itself. So maybe 6 inches or something away from that, uh, away from the wood itself, the frame that is.
All right, so it sounds like to me the erosion control would definitely stay up until the project is complete. And usually what we like to leave it up until there isn't any exposed soil around. So say it was a project that did have exposed soil that you were going to loam and seed, we would leave the erosion control up until the seed took and there was grass. Um, this sounds like there's really not going to be much once the deck is there, exposed soil. Um,
Correct.
so once your project is really done, closed out, everything's cleaned up, you get in touch with Mateo actually or Jan, and we can have a commissioner come out and take a look. And if everything looks okay and stable, meaning that if there was a rainstorm, there wouldn't be any sediment ending up getting down towards the lake, then you can get rid of the erosion control. That's kind of how it works.
Okay. Understood.
Okay. Great. If you're finished, Jan, you did the site visit. I don't know, was Mayor with you? Did both you guys do it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any concerns or descriptions about the project to add?
No.
I think Jessica described pretty much what could be done.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I guess my one last question is, so the contractor, um, how are they may be using some larger equipment just to like pull up the loam and stuff? Do they have a way to get there without getting close to the lake?
Yes. Yep. You can come right onto my driveway, and that's going to bring you practically on top of the space where the deck will be going.
Okay.
It's very close. There's a couple of bushes that they might have to go around, but hostas, not bushes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Not a woody bush.
No, no.
All right, great. I don't have any more questions. Jan or Mayor, do you guys have anything? No? All right, I see Mary David's here. Hi, Mary. Um, Anyone from the public have any questions or comments? Nope. Okay, seeing no questions or comments from the public, um, I will take a motion to close the public meeting on 51 Shore Drive.
So motioned.
Okay.
Second? Okay, roll call, Fox,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
and Wilson. Aye. And I'll also take a motion to issue the determination of applicability. I think in this case, it's pretty simple. I think what I'll do is I'll have the RDA, the determination form, and determination, let's see, it's a -3 that is for work in the buffer zone. And if you check off -3 as your determination, you can add conditions. And I think the only condition I'm going to put in there is that erosion control be used between the lake and the work area. So if you guys are happy with that as the determination, we can just vote on it tonight and I can get it out.
I motion to write the determination just that way.
All right,
And
awesome. All right, Rowan,
Aye.
Fox,
I
and Wilson. Aye. All right, well, thank you, Jessica. So that determination that I just was talking about is the permit, and we'll get that put together and out to you probably, hopefully the first half of next week.
Okay, wonderful. So that'll come in the mail then or via email?
It can be both, so you can get the email one a little sooner and start with your project, but a hard copy will also come to you.
Okay, wonderful. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
I
All right. So the last thing is just unanticipated business, and I don't think we have anything. So we can go back to the to the regulations if you guys want to at least get through that small permit section tonight.
Sure.
Okay, let's do it.
It's hard to say we have to quit at 7:30.
All right, that seems a little like too fancy for us. You know. All right, where were we? Oops. All right. Applicants are responsible for ensuring that activities approved under a small permit do not result in any non-permitted alterations of a resource area, including the Aurora riverfront. Yep, that makes sense. Small permit applications must be submitted in writing at least 21 days before work. They should include a written description of the work, the name and contact information for the applicant, description of erosion control and stabilization, site plan or sketch identifying the location. I think we have a form too. I feel like if we don't, we probably should create one. I think there is one for the AAR. So I may want to include that here. See. Within 21 days of receipt of the application, we conduct a site visit and review it at our next meeting. Either approve or deny it. And the commission may attach conditions. Yeah, I think that's all makes sense. If approved, shall not require a professional wetland delineation, butter notification, or legal notice. No public hearing is required. And they're good for a year. Okay. I like it. I think my only other concern was if something comes forward with one of these that meets all of our requirements, yet it's not listed as a minor activity under the state regs, doesn't it need filing with the with the state? And I think Miriam had talks with Mark Stinson about that. And I guess she sort of took it as that things like tree removals, she kind of got the feeling that the state doesn't necessarily want to get so involved with small projects like that. But I haven't had a chance to talk to Mark yet about it because it's confusing to me having done the work in Amherst where, you know, if it's not this, it's this, you know, if if it's not listed as a minor activity, you file an RDA, you know, it's like, that's how the state law is written. So that's the confusing factor for me that I just kind of want to figure out with Mark. But anyway. Should we keep going into the RDA section? This stuff, I don't have a lot of changes for any of these sections that are so similar to the state. I don't think I had any changes to this.
Where is, I'm not sure where it falls. And maybe it's down further in the process. There was some discussion about who has to be notified.
There's a section on like other committees. Is that what you mean?
Well, it gets back to that, we brought this up before. The question of who the abutters are. So you have to, you know, the obvious 100-foot abutters next door, whatever. And across the street. And, you know, we're talking about having to notify people all the way across the lake. That maybe didn't make sense, and it made for a pretty huge list.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're pretty far away.
About to discuss in Article 5 above in these regulations. Do you want to go back and look at that?
Maybe, because I thought I saw it when I was whipping through this before the meeting. You know,
Oh,
somewhere in this pile, and I highlighted it, but now I don't find it, so who knows what happened to that.
oops. Comply with the butter notification requirements. The owner, that 8.4 talks about shall include written certification that the owner of the area, if the person making the request is not the owner, has been notified. I think that's the only reference to abutters in the RDA section is 8.3 and
Yeah, I'm not sure
8.4.
that it's in the RDA section. That's, you know.
Oh, maybe it's in the
Terribly helpful,
NOI
but-
section.
We determined that the lake, like, that didn't fit within an actual butter. I thought that
I
Let's
know,
go
but I
back
read
you're
it
separated by
recently
the
and I can't
water,
remember
that-
where I saw it.
Let's go back to section 5. So why does it say section 5 with a V? Oh, there it is. Butter notification, section 4.
Right, right.
Where the delineation activities proposed, including owners of land
Right.
directly opposite on any public or private street or way,
Or a
or
body of water.
across a body of water.
less than
Less than-
50 feet. Yeah.
That's what
that?
we added.
Less than
I
50
like
feet.
that.
We added that.
Yep.
We
Good
did.
job. All right, I can live with that.
Yeah, all right, good. So the determination. Positive or negative within 21 days.
Does 8.7.2 mean if there's only 3 of us present, that 2 are all that's required to go ahead with this?
Um,
We don't need a quorum?
Good question. I get confused by that all the time.
It seems to
I
be the
can
way it
try.
reads, and it doesn't, I don't know if that is what we
Looks like
should do.
looks like Tom knows the answer. Tom?
I suspect I do, excuse me, but because it says present at a public meeting, it can't be a public meeting unless there's a quorum. So by being a public meeting, there would have to be a quorum. So for a group of 5, 3 would have to be present, and then 2 would be a majority of the 3. That's how I read it for this Conservation Commission. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
so
Because like the public meeting part is for me the key phrase. Because it's not a public meeting if it's not a quorum.
right. So there's the question of quorum just to open and have a meeting versus quorum to vote on permits. Because say you have 4 people at the meeting, and so you have quorum to have the meeting, but then 2 of them have to abstain from this particular project because they are abutters or something. Our when I think of our quorum, it's always 3. 4 to start a meeting really, or but also to just vote on things in general, permits and accepting conservation restrictions and whatever else we vote on. So this is something I need to look into. Because but that says there is different than how I have always kind of
Yeah,
thought that we needed 3 people to vote on anything. Okay. Commission shall find that the bylaw applies to any portion thereof. All right, I don't have any other changes to the RDA section. Notice of intent. Um, 9.6, if an applicant wishes to obtain an ORAD, they must file an ANRAD prior to filing an NOI. Alternatively, the boundary of a resource area may be determined through the filing of the NOI or an RDA. You can file one of those to just do a delineation. You don't have to do an ANRAD. Resource area boundary delineations shall be reviewed during winter months in accordance with the winter delineation. Oh yeah, we have that. To read through that. Anybody have any comments on the NOI section? It's all pretty straightforward. It's just how people apply. Oops, and then this is just how the public hearings are run. Within 21 days of a receipt of the application, you can continue a public hearing. Checks to a continuance, the hearing shall be closed and the commission shall take action. Yeah. You always come up with this thing that we have the authority to continue a hearing. But an applicant can object to continuing the hearing, and if that's the case, then the hearing gets closed and we make a vote right then. I mean, at that point, what most likely happens is if they don't, for some reason, there's some sort of an issue and they don't want to continue it, we can basically say that we don't have enough information to make a decision, and then you're just you're throwing out the application. And they would have to start all over again if they were unable to, or if we feel like we have the info, then we just vote on it. But if you're going to continue it, it's usually because you haven't really finished gathering information.
Does that give the commission the ability to continue it if for some reason we lose quorum in a meeting? Somebody can't vote for some reason? Where it's our fault, where it's our responsibility.
That would get tricky because if you don't, first of all, you need to vote to continue it. So you'd want to have quorum to even vote to continue it. Also, if we want to continue it for some reason like that and the applicant says no, then again, it would be like right at that point, we would need to take some kind of action, which if it's voting and we don't have the quorum, that's pretty tricky. Sticky, yeah. I mean, it typically, if in situations where this has happened, I mean, it happens a lot where all of a sudden somebody gets sick and we don't have quorum and we can't have a meeting at all. I mean, I've ran into it a lot in Amherst. You call the applicants and say, I'm sorry, we don't have quorum for tonight. We can't have our meeting. And they really don't, in the end, don't have much of a choice. If they want their project to go forward, they're coming to us asking permission from us. So if they're not willing to switch to another meeting night, it's really our ability then to say, well, sorry, we can't issue
So
a
that there's no automatic in for somebody who has who's faced with that situation but wants to move forward.
Like a special meeting, or
What's that?
like calling a special meeting or agreeing to a special meeting or outside a
I mean,
regular meeting date or something, or
we could certainly try to work with them, like say they were traveling or something and they needed the meeting within the next 3 days after the one that got canceled,
Right.
we would probably, I mean, just to be a good town committee, we would make every effort to try to do that for them. You know, because it would have been too bad,
Yeah.
but
I'm just, thinking worst case scenario.
you always do, Jan. You are
Yeah,
always
that's
throwing
my-
out the doozies.
If you need a curmudgeon, I'm handy.
You've always got the questions, but it's a good one. 5 business days, yep.
Could I ask about the 5 business days?
Yes.
I'm just looking at 40A, Section 11 in Massachusetts about notice requirements for public hearings. Because like in Wendell, we do 14 days. And that's what that says. I didn't know if you knew what the 5 days was based on. Or just to flag it, please. I've never seen it as 5. I've always understood it as 14 for the newspaper notices.
I should look back at, we should look at the Wetlands Protection Act, because I almost want to say it's 7.
Oh, okay.
Amherst does 7. And I should look through these regs. I don't know if I want to do it right now. Maybe I'll just highlight that as something to check.
Thanks for letting me ask it anyway. I just wanted to ask more than anything.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'm trying to get back to the regulations. I'm gonna highlight it, and if the Wetlands Protection Act, whatever the Wetlands Protection Act says,
Okay, I'll look at that too. Thanks.
now just go away. My little border thing will go away so that I can get to. There we go. Okay. Yeah, let's highlight that. Because if the wetlands, if the Wetlands Protection Act says 5, then we could leave it, but if it says more like 7, or I don't think it was 14, at least in the wetland stuff, but yeah, we'll check that. Mm. Mm. All right, should we maybe call it quits for now? We'll continue when Scott and Bob can join us.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're on section 11, coordination with other boards and offices. Let me look at the table of contents and see what's really left of this. I don't think there's much. This is 11.
there's a fair amount.
Yeah, I feel like, in our next meeting when they're with us, if we, again, can just pound it out, we can do another 6 o'clock meeting if people want to. I think we could easily get through all these sections that are really quite short, and that are just almost things that are required in regulations. So we're on 11, coordination with other boards, 11 through 23 of Article 5. Just pretty simple stuff. Like if everybody just wants to look through it between now and then, and
Mhm.
so I think for most of it, we won't have any comments or anything.
Yeah,
And then
I like
I'll,
that. I like starting early rather than doing it, tagging it
Yeah.
on after.
Maybe we could start on at 6 on the 22nd.
works for me. And try to get through all the rest of Article 5. All right. I have nothing else. Does anybody have anything else? No? Well, thanks for coming.
I move
Oh,
to
thank
adjourn.
Wait, well,
Whoop.
whoa. We need, so at our next meeting, 98 Lake Drive, is gonna come to our next meeting, so we'll need a site visit. Jan, if
98
you
Lake
wanna,
Drive.
I figure that out, 98 Lake Drive.
I'm pretty available. Do we want to work out something now?
Yeah, me too.
Or, I don't have my,
We gotta make sure, Mr. Murphy is home.
let me get my phone.
Where's 98?
It's the log cabin.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember if anybody was down there lately.
Um, can't find my phone, my calendar, but we'll just wing it here. You wanna do it next week?
Yeah, let me see if I can get a hold of him and then we'll come back with, some possible days. Do you
Okay.
have any you can't do? Do you wanna?
Wednesday is never good for me.
Okay.
That's really the only day during the week that I can't do afternoons.
I can't do Wednesday afternoon this coming week, but I could do or Thursday. I could do Monday or Tuesday.
Okay. I think those are both okay for me.
What about Friday? In case they're coming and going.
I mean I could do Friday after like 4.
Okay.
You mean tomorrow or next Friday?
Probably next Friday.
Oh, okay. I could do next Friday after 4.
I think I can.
I'll see if I can get a hold of him and see what happens.
Okay.
Great.
Um,
Thank you for doing that.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All right. Fox,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
and Wilson. All right. Aye. Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.
Gators.
You too.